China released a white paper on its anti-terrorism and human rights protection measures in Xinjiang. What are the key messages? What new insights does it reveal to counter the negative portrayal of these issues in the Western mainstream media? And questions are still swirling around the attack that killed 50 people at 2 mosques in New Zealand. What motivated the suspect and what can be done to prevent future hate crimes? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. Terrorism is the common enemy of humanity and the target of joint action by the international community. This is the first line of a Chinese government white paper released on Monday on its anti-terrorism, de-extremization and human rights protection efforts in the Xinjiang Uygur Autonomous Region in northwest China. The paper stressed that Xinjiang is an inseparable part of Chinese territory, highlighted the importance of taking preventive steps to counter terrorism, and called for more international exchanges and cooperation on the issue. According to the white paper, since 2014, Xinjiang security forces have destroyed nearly 1,600 violent and terrorist gangs, arrested some 13,000 terrorists, seized over 2,000 explosive devices, punished over 30,000 people, and confiscated over 345,000 copies of illegal religious materials. China has been facing international scrutiny for setting up vocational education and training centers for people who have been influenced by extremism. What is the purpose of this white paper then? What are the key messages, and will it help balance the coverage of these centers in the Western mainstream media? Joining me for the discussion in the Beijing studio are Qinduo, Senior Fellow from the Pangoal Institution, and Victor Gao, Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point.
Thank you.
So a series of numbers I said in the leading. What does that say about the kind of background to the actions that the government in Xinjiang have taken to counter terrorism, and hence the necessity of publishing such a white paper?
I think the white paper is really designed to set the record straight, especially at the time when there are so-called international Western media, for example, who have been very negative in reporting about the realities in China. I think there is an attempt in the Western media try to depict the situation in a very negative way, which is very untrue and very inaccurate. And I think this white paper is really putting all the facts together on the table so that everyone can see, and also it tries to elaborate the real reason, the real realities on the ground. What are the main threats that the people in Xinjiang and elsewhere in China are faced with? That is terrorism and extremism, and also very much so separatism. So these are the three forces that China as a country need to fight against, and I think the majority of the people, including me, for example, are very much behind this effort to fight against the three evils.
Yeah, well, the numbers I gave in the beginning actually are just the kind of actions that were taken to deal with the situation, but rather the reason why so much actions have to be taken. For instance, so many gangs have to be busted, so much explosive devices have to be seized. Qinduo, what was the security situation in Xinjiang that made it a soil conducive for the spread of terrorism?
The hotbed for terrorism. If you read the white paper, actually the situation worsened since 1990 until like 2001, the 9/11 terror attack against the United States. Since that time, the radicalization or the spread of the extremism has been to basically every corner of the world, and China is not exempt from that. And in Xinjiang particularly, the young people gotten radicalized through the internet. So give you some example. For example, like there are some extremist ideas, like there's say, oh, you should not watch the TV, you should not read the newspapers, you should not go to the cinema, and even you are not allowed to cry at the funeral. You should not dance and sing.
Sit in the same room if you're not married.
In the common folks' memory about Xinjiang, there are dancing, singing, young girls, but not anymore. that's obviously the tension, the trend.
Yeah.
I mean, radicalization is obviously there. You need to do something.
Also, according to this white paper, in the period since 1990s to last year, there were thousands of terrorist incidents in Xinjiang, so it's really not a small number. I guess that is why in the paper it says, and I think that is a very important paragraph, in the face of these real threats, Xinjiang has taken resolute action to fight terrorism and extremism in accordance with the law, effectively curbing the frequent occurrences of terrorist activities and ensuring to the maximum extent the rights to life and development of people of all ethnic groups in Xinjiang. Victor, a lot of messages here. We talked about the real threats, but why does it highlight the aim, the ultimate aim, being ensuring to the maximum extent the rights to life and development of people of all ethnic groups in Xinjiang?
I think it is true that China is not immune to terrorist influences, especially Xinjiang. Why? Because Xinjiang borders with Afghanistan, and for decades the terrorist activities have taken place in Xinjiang, and there is taken place in Afghanistan. There is a spillover of such terrorist forces from Afghanistan into Xinjiang. There are Uyghur fighters fighting in Afghanistan against American soldiers, against the NATO soldiers. Some of them have been arrested by the Americans, and they were put into Guantanamo, for example. This is for everyone in the world to see. So anyone who denies that there is infiltration from Afghanistan into Xinjiang for the terrorist groups, for example, is really denying the realities. So for the Chinese government, the top priority is to make sure that the people can live in peace and their life can be protected and they can enjoy stability and go on with their life as normal persons.
The key word here in the solution to the problem is preventive, and I think that is a very unique way to approach this problem. That is what China has been doing. We're not going to wait till terrorism has already happened, that people's lives have already been taken away. We're going to preempt these efforts. How unique is that, Qingdu, and why there are no better alternative, or why is it effective till now?
I would say so. If you look at the Chinese approach, I call it like a holistic approach, just like a traditional Chinese medicine. It's not about like you have a headache and let's work on your head. No, it's about your whole body. But your health is about your being a healthy and a stronger body over there. If you look at the Chinese approach, it's often state-led, state-organized. That's part of the reason why the Western media, when they report this issue, they say, hey, they are forced to do something. It's like, oh, you're robbing people of their freedom and rights. If you go back to the founding of the Republic since 1949, there's, at the beginning, there's like a literacy issue. So there's almost a national campaign to reduce illiteracy. Then there's evening school. Almost every village, people after work, they go to the evening school. And it's very effective. People learn how to write their names, how to read the basic Chinese. And also another good example would be this poverty alleviation. This is state-led, state-organized, and it's so effective that 800 million people getting out of poverty over the past 40 years. And I'm confident these efforts in Xinjiang will produce similar results.
The paper says that it's a fundamental human right of the citizens to be free from violation by terrorism and extremism. So obviously we're not just stressing some political demands, some political needs of a small group of people, but rather the human rights of everybody to their life, to development, and to be free from the evil of terrorism. Victor, how do you look at the different angle of looking at this issue?
I would say when we talk about human rights, one of the most important human rights is to live in peace and in safety.
And be alive.
Of course, if you are if you need to worry about you being attacked, for example, or your life being taken away, then your human rights will be extinguished in a sense. So let's be really serious about protection of human rights. The key important component of human rights is the right to life and to peaceful life and stable life.
But here comes the question.
This is the bottom line for the people, I would say.
But here comes the question. Those people who have been influenced by extremism, whether they have committed a terrorist crime or whether they have not, or whether they are yet to commit such a crime, they have human rights as well. So I think the difficulty lies in when you're trying to do both things at the same time, how do you make sure that the rights of everybody is protected to the maximum extent and at the same time? Victor?
Now, for example, I would say no one should prevent or disallow a boy or a girl, for example, from going to school. And it happens in many parts of Xinjiang where, for example, some families being influenced by these extreme forces actually prevent their kids from going to school. Why? For example, sometimes they are influenced to believe that going to school, their kids will learn Chinese. Of course, as a Chinese citizen, you need to learn Chinese. Chinese language is the working language in the country. So I think this kind of behavior is no longer exercise of freedom or human rights. This is a violation of a kid's rights to study and go into school. And I think we as a society need to be mobilized to make sure that every kid in China has the right and will exercise their right to go to school, to study.
Well, you don't hear about these rights being infringed upon when you read about stories about Xinjiang in the Western mainstream media. There are a lot of other invisible efforts to try to protect the rights of not just the Uyghur people, but all of the ethnic minorities and majority of people in Xinjiang. But I want to address Qinduo, ask you to address this very sensitive question about these vocational education and training centers, because a lot of questions are being asked there. Exactly what kind of people have to go there? Are there? And under what, can they leave? Can they take leave? Can they eventually leave those places? Under what circumstances?
Yes, according to this regulation, there are three kinds of people, based on their intention, based on their behavior. For example, they were part of this criminal activity or terror activity.
Are they just taken off the streets like randomly?
No, it's based on your records, based on the records of what you have done.
But are there laws and regulations for the judicial organ, for the law enforcement officers to decide who to take, who not?
There are specific regulations based on the national law and to deal with this kind of behavior, this issue. And of course, when they receive this education training in the education training center, they have the holiday like. They can go back to the home and meet their family. At the end of the session, actually, there's assessment. It's almost like a graduation, and then you will receive a certificate if you finish and complete all the courses. And then, I would call it like a very comprehensive, very unique approach. That is, like during their stay, they are not only provided with learning this speaking and written national language, but also they'll receive a vocational training, acquire a new skill to find a new job, to have a stable life, and to have a normal life, I would say. At the same time, there will be education about eradicate the radicalization, the idea.
De-extremization.
Right.
I want to touch upon another very important part of this white paper, Victor, which is about the diversity of Xinjiang, about its origin, that since ancient times, actually 60 before BC, that it became part of officially part of Chinese territory, and there are multi-ethnicity in Xinjiang, multi-religion, there is a varied religious structure. What do people have to know about these information to understand the situation better?
Well, Xinjiang is very much an integral part of China, and I would say no Chinese people will ever allow any real attempt to try to split Xinjiang away from China. That's the bottom line. That's one thing. Now, even though Xinjiang officially is called the Xinjiang Uygur Autonomous Region, in Xinjiang there are more than 40 different ethnic groups. In China altogether we have 56 ethnic groups, of course. That means in Xinjiang there are so many different people of different ethnic groups. And you have not only the Uyghurs, you have the Kazakhs, you have the Mongolians, for example. You have all kinds of people. And also the Han Chinese, like me, for example, they are also every part in Xinjiang. So Xinjiang is not for one particular group or so.
Or one particular religion.
Or particular religion. It is really for such a diverse body of people. And all of them are Chinese citizens over there.
All right, we have to leave it there. Many thanks to Qinduo, Senior Fellow from the Pangoal Institution, and Victor Gao, Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization.